Hello and welcome to the Business of Property. I'm Stuart.
And I'm Simon.
We are both property people running our own businesses, and this podcast is just us talking about the reality of anything and everything property. Now, we also try and do that in a concerted way and provide information which we think is going to be of use to all of you. And if you would like to join our email subscriber list, we have very kindly for you put the link right at the top of the show notes. So just scroll down, hit that link, and you'll be part of our email subscriber list where we will endeavour to give you all of the things that we talk about that we think are of interest and any resources we think will be of use to you. Now, we've had a number already join. So first of all, just want to say thank you to those that have joined so far. And once again, if you do want to join, there's a link in the show notes right at the top there. And alternatively, you can just head over to thebusinessofproperty.com and there'll be a tab there that you can click into. Now, for today's episode, Simon was just talking to me about a couple of potential properties that he's looking at, obviously through the lens of investment. And we felt it would be good just to go through what Simon's thinking about, why these two properties became of interest, and process for that. So Simon, I'm going to hand over to you, maybe just to set the scene a little bit for the listeners in terms of what you are looking at.
Well, I think there's a twist to this tale that perhaps we'll save for the end. But these two properties fall very much into the kind of properties that I'm looking at as my next investment properties. I have a property that I recently bought, which was a 2-bed terrace house. And I was thinking of getting another 2-bed terrace house. And these are in the Red Hill area. So that's local to me, and that's part of sort of my investment strategy so that I can look after them myself. And these two properties have come onto the market relatively recently. And I just thought they were an interesting comparison between the two because they are actually identical. And now I will include the links to them in the show notes, and people will click through and they will look at the pictures and instantly say, no, they're not, because they look quite different on the outside. What one is rendered at the bottom, tiles at the top for the 2 stories, and the other one is brick throughout, and the windows are a bit different, doors are different, they're actually reversed, so the door's on the right, the other's on the left, and yeah, you don't instantly think that they're the same, but click through, scroll down, look at the floor plans. The properties are identical. They're exactly the same size, exactly the same layout. They're on the same estate. They were clearly built at about the same time, presumably, probably by the same builder. They are the same. And that matters because one of them came on to the market on the 16th of November, and it was listed for £365,000. Then 10 days or so later, it was reduced from 365,000 to 350,000. And on that same day as that one was being reduced, its twin was being listed for the first time at 400,000. Now, the newly listed one that's being listed for more is in a slightly better condition. It is better presented. It's got a nicer garden and various other characteristics that I would say make it look better. I'm sure add some value to it. But to be going from 350 to 400 for essentially the same property, I'm not convinced. And I think this is just a sign of the market at the moment really being a bit confused about where it is. You've got properties that are on being reduced, and then you've got other properties coming on effectively identical for massively more in terms of asking price. And I don't know. I mean, Stuart, you've had a little look at these two properties. Am I missing something? Is there something that makes one of them £50,000 more valuable than the other one?
Well, the first question I've got for you is, have you reviewed these properties on Google Maps Street View?
No, I have not. I know the estate that they're on. I know it reasonably well. I know they're all very similar in terms of the roads that they're on. And in fact, I've checked that both of these properties do have parking. I think the cheaper one has a garage. And the more expensive one just has allocated parking. Yeah, I think so. Double checking the listings.
I mean, there's two things that stand out to me. So before even reviewing the property, the more expensive one backs onto a school or is next to a school.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason I was just asking about sort of location, because obviously the first thing we all hear all the time is location. The cheaper of the two, which has a garage, is also near the same school. So they're both within 50 meters of each other. I think that's the other interesting point, is that they are very, very close to each other. The first thing that jumped out to me from the cheaper of the two, the one that's 50,000 less and has offers over, so that's always something to call out. So they're clearly not expecting anything less than 350,000. But it's on the first image, there is a big brick wall to the left of the front door, and that's always that's the first thing that draws me to it in terms of the comparison that you've made. So the one without a garage is currently up for £50,000 more. So my first thought is there something strange about the location within the one that's cheaper of the two, which is why they've already knocked that down. And based on your software, PaTMa, it was up for only a little over a week before they brought it down. And it started at 365, so not even close to the 400 that the other property's at.
I think it's probably an indication that one of them is a keen seller and the other one is not so fast. And that wall next to it, while I haven't specifically found this one on Street View or indeed walked around the corner and had a look at it, I know that there are several like that, and it's where the house next to it is further forwards. So I think that's just the side of the next house. I don't think it's anything too untoward.
No, not untoward, but then that could put some people off, and you wonder if that's something that's factored in because it runs along the garden pathway. So actually, as you walk towards the house, you've got a big brick wall. So for us, for example, when we were purchasing our current house, and they were new builds, there were some new builds. So they're all surrounded by houses. Let's not beat around the bush. Of course, in new builds, you're surrounded by houses, but some of them, the garden, actually, the neighbour's house was positioned in such a way that there was a brick wall next to your garden, which to us felt quite enclosed. The house we chose in the end, we chose it specifically because the houses around it were just a little bit further back, which for us just felt a little bit more spacious. Now we know the neighbours now, and some of them a bit further down the road, they got ones where, for us it was like, oh, that feels really not looked upon, but it almost felt crowded. However, they got more square meterage in the house, and I think that was part of one of the factors that was into play, is that, okay, you get a bigger house, but you're gonna have a brick wall at the back of your garden.
Yeah, and I haven't found these exact properties on this estate, and I know that some of the properties are sort of directly on the road. I mean, not directly; they've got little gardens in front of them, but some of them are also sort of, I can't think how to describe it, but they're sort of down a little path before you get to the front of the house, so they're much further away from the actual road. So, for example, what one is, you think of one as sort of being parallel to the road, and the other is sort of perpendicular to the road in a terrace that's perpendicular. So you have to walk away from the road a bit in order to get to it. And I can see people might like that either way. So some people might say it's more secluded and we've got a bit more privacy, and the house is sort of away from the traffic and things. But I can also see the other side, where people might say it's further to walk from the road, further to walk from where we park, and actually I'd like to just be able to get my shopping out of my car and take it straight into the house without this extra distance to travel. So yeah, I'm not sure that should really make much difference. And looking at the photos of these houses, I'm not sure whether they're both in the same situation or whether one is one and one is the other. But I think on the balance of people liking one or the other, it probably doesn't make much difference, because you'll find people who prefer both.
Yeah, and looking at the more expensive of the two, actually that also has a staggered housing, but not as, just from the photos at least, it's not as apparent, it's not as direct. Whereas the other one is a brick wall, a raw brick wall that comes out. Actually, what I've only noticed on sort of second glance is that the more expensive, there is a house, further towards the road next to this one, which means that as you walk to the house, there is still there is a brick wall on your left, but it's a
Yeah.
painted rendered wall, which is therefore less kind of in your face.
So you prefer rendered walls, do you? I'm more of a brick wall person. I like the brick wall.
No, it's not. I have no preference. I think in that regards, but, I'm just saying in terms of noticeability, that's probably why it was less noticeable to me, because it's just a white wall.
Fair enough.
I suppose from an investment perspective, your immediate thought then is, well, why would I look at the 400 when there's one on offer for 350? So where is your thought taking you next?
Yeah, so exactly. So from these listings, I can jump through to the PaTMa financial sort of forecast or breakdown of what you could do with these properties. And even if you decide the cheaper one needs some work and you want to put some extra money into it, there's no way you're going to need to spend 50,000 to make it look like the other one, regardless of, or almost regardless of what state it's in. Maybe we should come back to my current one that I'm refurbing at the moment, but we'll do that another day. And the added benefit of the money that you put in on refurb is that you're not paying stamp duty on it. So there's that extra allowance for money that you put in on refurb versus money you put in on the purchase. So you can do the figures, and the cheaper one just works out cheaper. It works out the better investment as far as I can see, regardless of what you need to do with it. And you get a garage with it as well, which you could potentially charge more rent for, probably only a little bit, but you could also potentially separate it from the house and rent it out just as a garage. There's actually a reasonable demand for garages around this area, so that is another possibility. But if I just use the default figures from PaTMa, so I'm not going to customize them or anything, which you can obviously do. You can change whether you think there needs a refurb, how much interest you're going to pay on your mortgage, and whatever else. But if I just leave it as is and look at the figures in PaTMa, the cheaper one is coming out at a total investment of about 225,000, and the more expensive one is coming out at a total investment of nearly £280,000. So that's a lot of extra money you'd have to put in, and obviously that feeds through to the ROI because they're both so similar area. The rents forecast for both of them are exactly the same, £1,450 a month that PaTMa's worked out for me. And that means that the estimated ROI on the cheap one is 3.36, but the more expensive one is only 2.71. So it makes a huge difference to what you're actually going to be getting back out of these properties. And even if you then had to put in a little bit of refurb money for the cheaper one, you're still going to be doing much better in terms of your returns. So yeah, it really confuses me that someone has come to market with this more expensive house with the much cheaper one just down the road. And the kicker to this is that they're both up with the same agent as well. So it's not like they didn't know about the one down the road. so yeah, I do not understand how the agent or the vendor can be bringing this property to market saying, look, it's worth 50,000 more than the one down the road.
Well, I think it's a call to the agent, isn't it, to understand why. I mean, my gut feeling is often that it's the vendor that's pushing this, because I know this particular agent, and historically they've been pretty good. Particularly, we sold with them as well, and I found them to be quite amenable, understanding, and knowledgeable of local markets. So I'm personally surprised that they would have two properties on that are very similar, and as you said before, is a garage worth £50,000? Not, price of buildings expensive, but it's not that expensive.
Oh, but remember, it's the cheaper one that has the garage.
Yeah. So that makes even less sense.
Maybe the garage is completely derelict and falling down, and it's cheaper because you're going to have to rebuild the garage. Maybe that's the detail we're missing.
Yeah. But as you say, I mean, the higher of the two is just, and you look at the floor plan. It's one of these. It's a property that you don't get particularly excited around. Not from a. It's essentially a 2 up, 2 down, or a 2 up, 1 down because it's larger, bigger room. But it's
Yeah.
But from an investment perspective, it meets the criteria for you in terms of local to schools, actually very central to the shopping district, train station. So it's a really good location. But for 10-15% higher, I'd be interested to see what the agent says. And my view would be that it's probably the vendor hasn't caught up with the market yet, even if they've explained to them that we have another property. But maybe their agent hasn't said that. But anyone that's selling their property, well, like me, would be on there quite regularly, just checking out the competition to understand where you sit in the market. It's quite a basic thing. So I'm really surprised that it's still around at that level when there is a property with a garage for a much cheaper price.
Yep. Well, we obviously can't see what happens behind closed doors and what offers might actually be going in or accepted in the end. But I have set both properties up to be monitored by PaTMa, and it will email me as and when prices are reduced or the properties are taken off the market. So perhaps in a few weeks or a couple of months' time, when they've both run through the market a bit, we'll revisit them and see what has actually happened and what it looks like has transpired. And of course, to actually get the sold price or the sold values that are agreed, we'll have to wait many more months for the land registry data to come out. It was interesting you mentioned you don't know what the agents are saying, but I have had some agent communications recently. I don't know about you, Stuart, but I've heard almost nothing from agents for months, I think because they've been far too busy with inbound leads. But just in the last few weeks, I've had a few emails from agents saying, have you seen this new property that we've listed? And things like that. But one of them I had was actually asking questions of me. And then first of all, they were saying, am I still looking? But then they were saying, most people have updated their criteria if they are still looking. Can you please update us on what you're looking for? So this is an agent I've had quite a long relationship with. I've not bought anything through them or sold anything through them, but they've always been very good. And I've viewed quite a lot of properties with them, and I have put offers in and things, and almost got one agreed. But anyway, that was a while ago. So I quite like this agent. So I thought, okay, I'll reply and update you with the current criteria. And I obviously am still looking. But in order to provide the criteria, I actually went through some calculations. And I had been looking for 2-bed terrace houses up to about 400,000. Ideally, probably a bit less, but that was sort of my upper limit for the deposit I had. And I needed to update this criteria. So I'm still looking for 2-bed terrace house. I don't want to go into flats. I want to stay in freehold. And sort of a 2-bed terrace house is sort of the cheapest end of that you can realistically do that should rent well. But because of the current mortgage restrictions, it turns out that my maximum purchase price is now only just over 300,000 with the same deposit that I had before, because obviously my deposit hasn't changed. My purchasing power has gone from almost 400,000 to only just over 300,000. And it was quite shocking for me to really see this in black and white, that I just can't buy pretty much anything that's out there in my target market at the moment. Because while they are coming down, and we've looked at 2 today, one's still at the top end of that, but one is at the 350 price point, so that's getting a lot closer, but I still just couldn't afford that. My deposit would not stretch that far. So I'm having to wait until that comes down a bit more. And I don't know whether that will happen or not. But I think it's going to be interesting because I'm clearly not going to be the only person in this situation. And I'm sure it must be affecting home buyers as well as investors. I mean, for investors, we have stress rates to contend with and things like that. But just the interest rates going up will be affecting home buyers as well. And it's a big change. Have you had to revise what you're looking at all, Stuart? Or have you got more flexibility in what you're looking and your clients are looking for?
Yeah, we've probably been just a little bit more on pause recently with what we're doing. And it's a case of something we've mentioned before, which is not that we're not going to do anything. We're just being a little bit more tentative about what we do. And that is for the reasons you've just mentioned. And your example of not being able to purchase what you would have purchased previously is that very reason. Because, we are seeing the reductions happen. I'm not sure they'll be as deep and as far as the media might have us believe. However, with those reductions happening, and as you say, with the fact that because of certainly in my experience, so my challenge at the moment is with actually most of the good mortgage products being around 70% or 75% loan to value. Those are the rates which we feel we can stomach. That's made it a little bit tougher for me because my leverage is usually higher. And in many ways, it's probably good for me personally in my business to just step back and actually allow what's going to happen in the market to happen, because we want our leverage to reduce. So it's the balance that I have is obviously we want to keep moving as a business, but then equally I'm a lot more conscious of our leverage as a business. So with a number of our early HMOs, they were all on 85% loan to values. The good news is that they've dropped now, but of course when it's come to refinancing now, they're probably not just around the 75%, 80% mark. So, for example, a big challenge I've had, which is on one property that's gone onto the SVR, we did want to take some more capital out of it just to return some funds. And so the property is valued at 160,000. It's a little 2-bed studio property. It's been valued at 160,000. That's been confirmed by a valuer. The current lending on it is about 100,000. And actually, we just wanted to take a little bit extra out of that. But the number one, due to loan to values, we weren't allowed. And then we thought we could have squeezed the pips on one of the products. But by the time, that might have released a further 9K, for example. But by the time you think, well, they're charging me the costs that I am aware of, £2,000 fee and a valuation fee. And I thought, actually, in real terms, in net terms, it might get me 5K if I'm lucky. So actually, I'm just going to have to bite the bullet and just go on to one of their standard products, not release any funds. Now, of course, these are first world problems, and that's fine. But it does mean that we're not taking some capital out that we were going to potentially use for other purchases. So slightly different to your scenario, but just in terms of it, sharing with other people how that's affected us. But of course, the flip side of that coin is that property prices are going to reduce as a result because not as many people in the market to buy, which means that the demand is lowering, and hopefully that means that prices will start to come down a bit for everyone, investors and residential purchasers alike. And hopefully the products will also start supporting that. We are seeing a levelling off on products, and we talked about it on this podcast a couple of weeks back, but we're definitely seeing better products come onto the market.
Yeah, the prices are definitely, I should say the interest rates are definitely coming down a little bit, just gradually. And I'm seeing more products with more relaxed stress tests as well, so extra flexibility on that too. But they're still just a massive change from how they were a few months ago. So I think it's got some way to go yet before the normal sort of levels of flexibility are available. And while I have a deposit ready to go and I want to get it deployed and into the market, it's frustrating that that's just not feasible in the current market for me at this time. But hopefully, I'll keep an eye on the market, and hopefully things will sort of shift around a bit in order to enable that again. And I think the seasonal market at the moment is obviously a bit downwards as people slow down ready for Christmas. But it will be really, really interesting in the new year to see whether that seasonal flow continues and things pick up again, or whether we head into an onward downward slide in the new year. That's going to be the really interesting point at which to be checking the data again and seeing what's happening.
Yeah, I think there's lots for us to keep an eye on in the property world, and I think it is very interesting times. And if you like property and you're interested in it, as we are, regardless of the challenges, it's certainly a spectacle right now with everything going on. So that brings us to the end of this week's episode. If you have enjoyed what you've listened to, please do leave us a rating and or review on your podcast player of choice. It really does help us and lets us know you care. And just a reminder, please do join us, BOP email subscriber list, where we will get you some useful hints, tips and resources. And other than that, we'll see you in the next episode.